Hi, my name is Theia. I'm the owner of Handmade by Theia on Etsy.com. Today is my first YouTube tutorial, and I'm going to show you how I made this resin swirl and gold flake notebook. On my channel, I'll show you how-tos, answer questions for resin beginners, and show you some shorts as well. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok as well, at Handmade by Theia, and also like and subscribe and hit the bell for more content. And now let's get into the video. So here are the items that we use to make this notebook. And I also like to cover my space with a silicone mat just to make sure I don't ruin my little leveler here. So we're going to mix this is a 2-part resin. This is part A. We're going to pour about 8 ounces for this notebook. Here, this is part B, so it's an equal measure resin, so we're going to pour 4 ounces of this as well. This is the resin hardener. Alright, now that we got our resin poured in, we're going to mix it for about 5 minutes. That's what's needed for this resin. You want to make sure you scrape the sides really well just to get that nice consistent resin. So now what I'm going to do is take the resin and mix it into separate parts so we can mix our colors. So we're pouring about 5 ounces in this first large cup, and then we're going to pour about 3 ounces in the second smaller cup. That's what we're going to use for our gold flakes. I actually end up not using that third cup. So make sure you scrape everything out here. We want to make sure we make use of all of this resin. We don't want to make any waste here. And if you do scrape out the bottom, you're going to have to remix it just to make sure whatever was stuck on the bottom is mixed really well and it's a consistent mixture. No streaks or anything. You want to make sure it's nice and clear. This is our bright white mica powder. I'm going to use that to mix this kind of a nice baby pink color. I like to make all of my colors custom, so I just kind of eyeball it, and I would say maybe about a teaspoon of that one. This is rose red. I'm going to use this color to mix with the bright white just to give that nice mixture. So you see, we're only using a little bit of that because we want to get a nice baby pink color here. We're going to mix that again for about a minute or so just to make sure that color is mixed really well together. Now we're going to take our gold flakes. I feel like the gold flakes make it look really elegant when you add that to your notebook. So for this, we're going to eyeball it as well, just to kind of get those flakes in there to make sure there's no real empty spots without the flakes. So we're going to put that in there and then stir it up really nicely. Now we're going to, once we get our colors mixed, we let it sit for about maybe 5 minutes or so. We're going to mix in, these are our molds. It's an A5 notebook mold, and we're going to lay that on our leveler just to get our stuff set up for the pour. You see that thickness of the resin? That's because we let it sit for about 10 minutes here. So we're going to pour our gold flakes in. Each corner of the notebook mold, and then we're going to pour it on the top portion of this mold. I like to make the front and the back look a little different. Here what I'm doing is spreading out the gold flakes in the resin so it's right where I want it. It gives me a lot more control over the resin when I let it get to this thickness. And do the same on that other side, just to make sure it's nice and flat and even. Alright, next we're going to grab our baby pink color that we made, and we're looking at the consistency. It's right where we want it. It's nice and thick. It kind of looks like taffy when you pour it. And you see how we're pouring it in that kind of a swirly circular motion. We want to let that hit the mold in a circle, and that helps with the effect of our swirls. Gonna do the same thing on the other side. Once we get that in the mold, we're going to take our silicone stirrer, we're going to spread that around so we can get it nice and even, and we're going to try and avoid overlapping of the gold flakes and the color. Now once we've let our mold sit for about 5 minutes, we're going to spray it with that blowtorch to pop all those bubbles. Now we've let the mold sit for about 2 or so minutes, and now we're going to go in with our stirring stick to make our swirls. There's no real reason or cause for the way that I kind of swirl it, but it looks like you're making little S's and circles, just like nice swirling patterns to give it that satin swirl look. When you're swirling here, try not to scrape the bottom. That's the reason why we poured it in that swirly fashion when we put it in the mold. So really kind of grab the top with that swirling stick and put your patterns in like that. Now as we're doing this, we're creating bubbles, so we have to go back in with our heat gun and torch those bubbles out. Here I'm also spraying it with alcohol, a 91% alcohol, just to get those bubbles out as well. Now it's sat for about 8 hours, so we're going to take it out of the mold. I like to do it while it's still flexible because it gives me more control over getting those edges nice and filed down. So you see it's still pretty pliable here, so I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to cut any of the extra excess off. See those little corners there? We don't want to cut our hands while we're using our notebook, so we got to make sure it's nice and smooth. I really like the way that color came out. And once we're done cutting it, we're going to take our little filer. I'm going to sand down the sides because this will help the gold leafing pen when we go through with our colors. It'll help it adhere to the notebook a little bit easier. Spraying it with alcohol here just to kind of clean that up, make sure there's no debris on the edges. Now we're going to go in with our drill gun to make the holes a little bit bigger so it can take to the hardware a little bit easier. We'll see that when we add those in. Alright, this is our gold leafing pen that we used. Going in on the corners here, again while it's pliable, so when it fully cures, it'll cure with that gold leafing on the edges. The gold leafing trim really adds a nice little touch to it. Here I am adding the hardware and the paper to the notebook, again while it's still pliable because I like the papers and the hardware to form around the notebook so it holds its shape really nicely. And that is our finished notebook.